Good morning, everybody. My name is Benjamin, and I am here to be with you today as we present Living Well, a relationship-centered model of care. Welcome this morning on this Tuesday morning. Excuse me one moment as I get my clock ready. I want to make sure that I am on time with you today. We are going to try to be done by the 45-minute mark. And if you have questions, you're welcome to stick around after that, and we will talk through questions that you might have. I want to start by asking this particular question that I asked a moment ago. What composition were we listening to, and who composed it? If you guessed that it was Bolero by Maurice Ravel, you would be correct. This is a very famous piece, and it has been made into all kinds of ballets and used in many different forms. It's a unique piece that starts very low, and by the end it becomes just this rousing raucous. You probably could hear it as it was a bit confusing to listen to at times, but it's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece. And the thing that I want you to know is the person who created it, his name is Maurice Ravel, and he had dementia when he created this piece. He had a type of dementia called FTD. He created the piece while living with dementia. He did not create the piece before he had dementia. He didn't create the piece in spite of his dementia. Instead, what some researchers believe is he created the piece because he had dementia, which is kind of a unique thing to think about. You see, FTD changes the brain in such a way that the brain sees patterns and sees mathematical patterns in ways that those of us without dementia might not see it. This is a piece that Dr. Ann Adams did where she said, okay, I want to paint what I think Maurice Ravel was composing. So what you see before you is a painting that tried to visually depict the music that you just heard. Dr. Ann Adams also painted this piece. It is a painting of pi. What would the number pi look like if you could visually paint it? Quite complicated, right? Most of us probably don't think that way. Wow, how could we paint a number as a picture? Well, Dr. Ann Adams also had FTD. She also was living with this same dementia. The reason I bring these two individuals up to you this morning is because as we embark on this journey together today, I want us to be present to the fact that we often don't give people with dementia as much credit as they deserve. We often, as a society, I'm not speaking for any of us on this call in particular, but in this society, we generally think that once someone gets dementia, they stop growing, they stop learning, they stop contributing, and that they are in need of our charity and our care, and that they are not indeed people who have incredible expressive abilities and incredible contributions yet to make. And so I just want us to be present to that as we talk through, how to care for someone with dementia. So today's presentation is Living Well, a relationship-centered model for care. And my purpose today in this presentation is specifically to speak to family members who are not in the field of dementia care. That is the purpose for this particular presentation. If you happen to be a professional on this call, I think perhaps you will also find it enjoyable just to hear how maybe I might speak to a family or educate a family. You might also pick up some things that might help you in your own practice, but it is targeted. This is designed for a family member who is caring for someone with dementia and is coming into the field not with a four-year master's degree in the subject, right? And is not coming in with lots of training. And now all of a sudden people are using words that they don't understand. They're having to pick things up real quickly and they don't know who to believe, right? So my purpose today is to give you a 40-minute quick overview of key principles, key vocabulary, the history, some myths, some words, basic philosophy, and if we have time, 7 practices to be looking for as a family member when you're crafting a plan for someone you care about with dementia, when you're talking with professionals at a home health agency, at a memory care, at a day center, when you're talking with a life care coordinator. What are you looking for? What are you paying attention to? These people have lots of classes they've taken. They've read lots of books. You may have not as a family member. what are you going to be looking for? Before I go too far, I just want to let you see my contact information. You're welcome to contact me after this presentation. I'm a social gerontologist. My passion is helping people of all abilities and all ages be able to thrive no matter where they are in their life. That is my passion. That's why I got into this field when I was about 12 years old, was by seeing elders not thriving and wanting to help make a difference in that area. I do want to point out that at the end of this presentation, you will have the opportunity to enter a drawing for the Caregiver's Care Package, created by a licensed family therapist who designs a new care package every month for family members who are caring for someone at home as a way of saying thank you. So anyway, this is a prize that we will be giving away. There's also a part of the drawing involves a journal designed specifically for caregivers, family caregivers, professional caregivers, helping you stay balanced, helping you stay focused on what's important and taking care of yourself. You can enter the drawing by simply going to this website, livingwellevents.org/insights. That's also how you'll be able to get the slides from today's presentation. I will put this up again at the end of the presentation today. Just a couple housekeeping notes. At the bottom or top of your screen, there is a Q&A button, as you can see right here, and there's also a chat button. The Q&A button is for asking questions. My friend Courtney is monitoring the questions, and she may be answering some of them herself, or she may let me know that I need to answer a particular question. At the end, I will go back to the Q&A, and I will look at them, and if we have time, I'll answer as many as I can live. The chat button will be, there may be some exercises that we might get to throughout this presentation, and the chat button will be what you'll use to answer those questions. So a brief history. Back in the early 1900s, this is how we took care of our elders, right? If you had dementia and you wandered, you'd have a ball and chain on your foot. Excuse me, my video has just stopped. Give me one moment, please. Okay, there we go. Back in the 1900s, this is how we would take care of our elders. We would put them in poorhouses. They were lumped in with the drunks, the alcoholics, the people who had no, who were crazy, literally. That's the way they talked about it back then. Today we'd say mentally ill. They thought of them as crazy back then. This is where they were. This is where they went. This is where elders went who were fortunate enough to live past 50 years old or so and didn't have the means to necessarily stay on the family plantation. This is where they went, poorhouses. They were in a very different kind of way than we are today. Back in those times, you also saw that that we didn't have, that medicine was delivered in the home, right? The doctor would come visit you in your home. This is how medical care was delivered. Well, early in the, I think it was about the 60s, 50s, 60s, right around that area, we started to see an explosion of hospitals in the United States, and medical care moved out of the home into the hospitals. Before this time, hospitals were, and about this time, hospitals, the way that they delivered care was really great nursing, right? It was keeping people warm, keeping them dry, keeping them clean. There wasn't a whole lot of technology at that time. As we exploded thousands of hospitals all across the country, the government got very involved and helped fund the loans for these hospitals that are now in almost every city in the United States. And so this is the journey that we're on. Now, so what started happening is elders started leaving the poorhouses and coming into the hospitals. So the hospitals become overrun with people whose only sickness is old age. They have old age, and the hospital's a great place to be. But now there's no room for anybody else. And hospitals begin to become places of technology. They become places where they are centers of technology, not centers of great nursing, but centers of great technology. And because of that, there were more demand upon the hospitals. People with heart attacks, people having babies, all these other things, people needed the hospitals. So what we did about the 1960s and 70s is we built nursing homes all over the United States. And these nursing homes, I think it was about 16,000 were developed in about a decade. These nursing homes were not designed for people with dementia. They were not designed for elders at all. They were simply designed to get elders out of the hospital. No one sat down and thought, what would a great life look like as an elder? How should we design that? No, it was kind of a mini hospital designed to get elders out of the hospital. And so that's what we had proliferated across the United States. Well, fast forward to about 1979, this couple, Alice and Emmett Kelsch, they created one of America's very first assisted living communities. So they were pioneering a new way of thinking about how elders could age in the United States, that they could age in a community with other people and have some of their basic needs met and have some support for the things that they need to do on a daily basis, like showering and taking medicine. Karen Brown Wilson is probably the most famous person in the 1980s. She developed what is now Enlivant, and it is one of the most, it was one of the first chains of assisted living in the United States of America. She was a gerontologist at Portland State University. So I bring this history to you just to realize that it's not been very long since people with dementia, people who are older in general, were living in poorhouses. So we've come a long way in just about 70 years. And in fact, in the 1980s, when Karen Brown Wilson was working, our nursing homes still mandated, basically, it was expected in our laws that you would tie elders up. So in the 1980s, when I was born in 1980, we were still tying elders up to chairs, to beds, and to wheelchairs. So if you can just imagine, think about when you were in 1980, grandmas and grandpas across the United States were being tied up because they were at risk of falling or because maybe they wanted to go home, right? We don't do that in the United States anymore, thanks to people like Joanne Rader and some other very pioneering people. So anyway, I just want to set the stage that now, as you're coming into this field, as you're a family member walking into a memory care community, you're walking into a home health agency, you're walking into a day center, come in with the context that we have come a long way as a society, and there's still a long way to go. We didn't get off on the right foot, putting our elders in poorhouses, and we're not necessarily where we need to be today either. And so it takes families advocating, it takes professionals learning and advocating, it takes elders themselves advocating, it takes all of us working together to continue to progress, to continue to make elderhood a great thing to experience in the United States of America. Now, I want to cover a few cultural myths. Just like Sasquatch may or may not be a myth, it is a myth, and we want to cover a few. These are cultural myths about dementia or old age. Another way to look at them is I'm going to show you an old value, which I'll call the myth, and then the new value, the thing that we're moving toward as a society. So the first old value is that aging, and dementia in particular, is all bad. And helping aging be less bad is our job as professionals, and as a family member, all you can hope for is to make the dementia journey just a little less bad. Maybe put the pillow under the gentleman that you see on the screen, right? Make sure he has a softer landing. The new value is no, I'm sorry, that's not true. Old age and dementia, you can continue to grow. It's not all about decline. There's also growth, especially if you choose it and if you have support from your family and your community. We grow until we no longer breathe. And, you know, I'm thinking in this particular instance of a neurologist I heard about 2 years ago get up in front of a group of seniors and tell all the seniors, if you get dementia, you lose your personhood. You lose your ability to grow. And I thought, how could he tell them that lie and give them that fear? Obviously, he was selling something, but how could he give them that fear? So, you know, I think about all the elders and some of the that I've met. And we have 32 communities, 22 memory care. And I think about the elders learning new languages, you know, the elders making new friends, the elders that are, you know, contributing to their community in new ways, the elders who are learning to laugh or share wisdom. I think about people like Maurice Ravel and Dr. Ann Adams, and I think there's no way that this is true, right? We continue to see that elders grow in wisdom, they grow in their friendships, they grow in emotion, they grow in creativity and ability to express themselves and to play. They grow throughout their life, and even with dementia, they can continue to grow. The old value is biomedical. It's a myth that everything we see about dementia is Biomedical. The brain is breaking. The brain is dying. Therefore, that is why the person is agitated. That is why they are depressed. That is why they are having, whatever troubles they're having, it is because of their brain breaking. If the person is throwing things, if the person is perhaps peeing in the wrong places, if the person is doing things that disturb you, it's because their brain is broken. Alzheimer's and other types of dementia pretty much are the brain breaking, and therefore that's what you see. Well, I get that. And there's a lot of truth to that, okay? There's a lot of truth to that understanding. However, the newer understanding is that most of what we see in a human being who has dementia is experiential. It is them responding to the world the same way that you or I respond to, but through the filters of someone who sees the world differently. Let me try to explain this for you in a real life example that I personally experienced. So a gentleman moved into a community I used to run. He had memory loss. He was in his 70s, and he was a tall, very strong gentleman, very, very, very polite man. But over several weeks of living in our community, he began to become, quote unquote, violent, aggressive. He would wander the halls. He would look into people's rooms. He would barricade himself in rooms. He would twist my caregivers' arms behind their backs. He began to get very aggressive. Well, in the old model, I would say, well, he's got Alzheimer's. What do you expect? His brain is broken. He's going to do weird things, right? That's the old model. The new model says, actually, he was being a good father, right? That's what the new model is saying. The new model is saying he was being a good father. And let me explain. This gentleman had a son that he had raised since he was, a baby, right? And this son had Down syndrome. All his life, that man had protected his son, had watched over his son, had made sure his son was safe. And all of a sudden, here he is in our memory care community, and he can't find his son. His son was safe. His son was in a group home specifically for adults his age with Down syndrome. But his dementia caused him to not be able to quite get the reality of the picture. But he was doing what any one of you on this call, any one of you would have done. You would have beaten the hell, the tar, the feathers out of anybody who stood between you and your developmentally disabled son. You would have knocked down doors. You would have punched out windows. You would have done whatever it took to make sure your son was safe. And so it doesn't really make sense to look at a human being who's responding to something very real in their eyes and say, well, he's a different kind of human. His brain's broken. He doesn't belong. We just have to give him some drugs, right? No, we need to really understand that people living with dementia are experiencing the world in a way any human being would respond to it. They just see it differently. They just see it differently. And it's our job as professionals and as concerned citizens to understand people in that framework. Now, another old value or myth is that dementia is the worst disease possible and that we need to have pity on people with dementia. The new value says, no, actually, the new value is normalization. The new value is that dementia is a chronic disease, just like diabetes and other types of chronic disease. Now, I understand and I have two relatives with dementia, and I understand the difference that it is between my grandmother with back pain and my grandfather who's losing his ability to remember basic things, right? I get that there's a different level of suffering with the disease of dementia. I'm not discounting that in any way. However, what we see as we have now been going through this kind of big explosion of dementia over the past 30, 40 years is that a good part of the suffering is actually not because of the dementia, it's because our communities are not communities set up, our cities are not cities set up to support people living with dementia. It's because all kinds of other chronic diseases seem easier to live with. Being blind in 2020 is very different than being blind in 1900. All right, being in a wheelchair in 1900 would be very different than being in a wheelchair today. The reason why you don't think about being in a wheelchair, being lame, being blind, being mute, being deaf, you don't think about those things and go, oh, that's the worst thing possible, because they were. You'd have to lay on a street begging, all right? The reason why they're not as bad is because we as a community have stood up and said, okay, you can't build a building in our cities unless you make sure a wheelchair can get through those doors. You can't build a bank, you can't build a store, you can't build anything in this city unless you make sure that someone in a wheelchair can get into it. And you make sure there's Braille on the signs, right? The reason we can say, oh, these diseases, I could cope with that, but not dementia, is because we as a society are not embracing people with dementia and figuring out how to help them live a great life. An example I can give you too is the president of an international association of people with dementia is constantly accused of not having dementia. She has 3 MRIs, she's had 3 neurologists test her, she's got dementia. But everywhere she goes, she's got doctors telling her there's no way you have dementia, because she receives support from people who help her live well. And so many people are not used to that, that they look at her and go, it can't be possible that she has dementia, because she's actually getting the support she needs to lead an international organization advocating at the United Nations for people with dementia. But we don't have that concept in our head that someone could actually live a thriving life with dementia if they get the support that they need. Now, that's not to say everybody's on a journey, and there's what success looks like when you're at the last stages of dementia is going to be very different than at earlier stages. So keep that in mind. But the point is, we see people having their personhood intact. We see people continuing to be themselves until they draw their last breath. Their communication abilities may be different, their ability to express themselves may be different, but who they are remains intact. Old value is sameness. Isolation and segregation is the best way to take care of elders, specifically those with dementia. The new value is no, integration is actually what is needed. We need people of all abilities, sizes, shapes, ages, ethnicities, religions, all living together, working together, interacting with one another. Another old value is care, focus on weakness and disability. If you're putting together a plan at a home health agency, a home care agency, a memory care, assisted living, skilled nursing, you're going to end up putting together a care plan. Well, if you look at a care plan, the whole focus is on what the person cannot do, what's wrong with the person. That's the whole focus. Some progressive ones may have a few things in there, but that are a little different than that. But generally, the whole focus is on dad cannot eat, spoon feed him. Dad cannot change his clothes, help him change his clothes, cue him in this way, do this way, right? And our whole system is based on how do we focus on people's weakness and disability and compensate for that. The new value is no. That is not the starting place. The starting place is well-being. The starting place is this is a person who has dreams, hopes, aspirations, desires, hobbies, challenges, dreams. Like I said, this is a human being who wants to live well, who wants to thrive. And our job as advocates, as professionals, as family members, is to keep that as the goal. This is the #1 goal. How do I help this person thrive? Okay, yes, safety is part of thriving. You can't thrive if you've got a broken back, right? Yes, you can't thrive if you're soiled, okay? You're not gonna be able to thrive. That's all part of the package, but it is not the goal. That is servant to the goal of well-being. And so we need well-being plans. We need wellness plans. We need us to be thinking when we're putting together a plan for someone with dementia, the first things we talk about is how is grandpa going to live well? What is he going to do that's going to help him really explore the world or explore his passions or simply enjoy his grandchildren, because that's what well-being means to him, right? That's what needs to be the goal. And then everything else that we plan needs to serve that goal. If it doesn't serve that goal, it probably doesn't belong in the plan. Old value is tact, protecting from reality. A lot of work done over the past 40 years has moved us away from a very awful way of doing things in the 80s, which was called reality orientation, where we told people the truth with their dementia, even if it hurt them. We told them again and again their dad had died, even though they were looking for their dad. We would tell them, you live here, you live here, you live here, even though you want to go home, you want to go home, you want to go home. We would give therapeutic lying. And there's still a place for that. There is absolutely a place for that. The brain gets so damaged that it really cannot grasp reality at some point. However, we've swung so far in this society to really whitewash, kind of like the Truman Show, to create a fake reality. And we don't talk about the neighbor who just died. We don't talk about their buddy at the table who just passed away and they've been together for 2 years. We don't talk about the fact that they're sad. Why are they depressed? What's going on? What have you lost? You know, they're not with their pet that they used to be with. Whatever it is, we've kind of moved where it's all happy, it's all entertainment, it's all games, fun and games. Right? Let's just keep people entertained. That's not an authentic human existence. So we need to embrace authenticity. We need to figure out how to be real with one another, regardless of our cognitive abilities. We have to change how we do that. We have to make sure that we do it in a way that doesn't hurt people, but we need to do it in a way that gives people permission to grieve, gives people the space to really express themselves as who they are versus feeling like they have no one that they can be themselves around. And then finally, old value is person-centered care. You know, a great value. I believe in it. I preach it all the time. So I'm not saying this value is necessarily going away, but in the old days, there was institution-centered care, right? It was your agency, your organization, the needs of the nurses, the needs of the care partners, the needs of the doctors came first. All the patients were lined up waiting for that doctor. They had to eat when the doctor said to eat. They had to jump when the doctor said to jump. Person-centered care came around the 80s saying, no, actually, we need to design our whole healthcare system around the person. What they like, what they need, what they want, what they desire, what makes them comfortable, what kind of, do they want a bath, do they want a shower, do they want a hot, do they want a cold, do they want to eat the coffee with the creamer, or they want the tea, or they want the milkshake? What is it that this person wants? And let's craft our care around them. However, we're kind of moving to a new era of empowerment, where we're not just saying, okay, I understand who you are as an elder and I want to help you live the life you want to live, but instead we're really finding tools to help empower that person to make their own choices. So it's not me telling you what you're going to do, even though I crafted that around your particular interests. Instead, we are now looking at how do we empower elders, even with dementia, to really be active members of their communities, to really have a say over what's going on in their life, where their wellness plan, AKA care plan before, what are they getting a voice in that? Are they getting to speak into what they're going to be doing every day and what their life is going to look like? So those are a few myths that I just wanted to bring up with you real quick. And before I go any further, I want to clarify just a couple terms, a few words, if you will, that I want to look at with you. The first one is, what is dementia? All right, that's the first thing I want to clarify, because there's a lot of misunderstanding among families around that. I get a lot of questions around, well, my dad has Alzheimer's but not dementia, or he has dementia but not Alzheimer's, or what's the difference between the two? And so here's how I say it. If you've ever had a fever, you know what it's like to have chills, to have all kinds of hot flashes, to feel clammy, to feel headachy, to have pains in the body, right? You know what that's like, but you don't necessarily know why you have a fever. You have a fever, it tells you that something's wrong, but it doesn't tell you what's wrong. You have to do a little more digging to figure that out. A fever is the symptoms, things like food poisoning or pneumonia, right? Those are causes of the symptoms. And so dementia is the same way. Dementia is like the fever. It is simply a cluster of symptoms: short-term memory loss, long-term memory loss, logical abilities gone, executive function, ability to make decisions gone, right? Ability to follow multi-step directions gone, perhaps hearing, sight, speaking is impaired. Those are symptoms. What's causing it? Well, that's another question. Alzheimer's is one of 200 plus different causes of dementia. It's just one of many, but it's a cause of dementia. So it's important just to note that when I say dementia, I'm talking about the symptoms, and your loved one may have one of 200 different causes of that dementia. All right, so that's the first term. A couple other terms you might hear floated around are different terms for people who have dementia, or for seniors themselves. We used to use words like old people and the elderly, and these cute elders, these sweet elders. I love working with them. We often hear, even today, the word dementia patients. The news media uses that frequently. It doesn't help us at all. Instead, we use words today in our field like elders. Elders is a time-honored word that describes the most powerful people in a community, the elders. We're not necessarily an eldertocracy here in the United States, and so we're fighting against a kind of a culture of youth that displaces the power and wisdom of elders. But elders, using the term elder, helps us kind of reclaim their position as very honored members of our society. The word seniors continues to be used fairly frequently, as well as older adults, especially in academic literature. A person living with dementia is how we would refer to someone living with dementia, not a dementia patient, not a dementia resident, not a dementia person. No, it's a person living with dementia. We want to make sure we keep personhood at the forefront, and describe something they happen to be living with. They're not a person suffering with dementia, they're a person living with dementia. We have to make sure that our words match what we're trying to accomplish in helping people live well. We may also use the word resident or client depending on our professional background. We also used to use words like facility, and it's still used a lot, referring to a kind of a factory, an industrial factory where old people were kept. Facility, old folks' home, nursing home, and even retirement home to some extent. Today we use the word community a lot, senior living community, memory care community. We might use the word center, a skilled nursing center, a rehabilitation center. In the UK, they often use the word aged care homes. So I'm not going to go into all the reasons for the different terminology. I just want you as a family member to be aware. So if you're talking to someone and they're using kind of the old words, you may wonder, are they staying up on education? Are they growing? Are they learning? Or are they stuck in a time period that we've moved past, right? Now, what is relationship-centered care? Okay. This is a four-year degree, master's degree, and I'm going to try to squeeze it into 5 minutes, so please pardon me. A better question might be, what makes life worth living? Now, what I'm going to briefly touch on is kind of a model or philosophy that guides various people in the field of memory care. So in the 1990s, Tom Kitwood wrote a book called Dementia Reconsidered. The person comes first, and he was very foundational in shaping the future of caring for people with dementia. And one of his tenets is that the personhood of everybody with dementia is the most important thing, and we need to take care of the person, and everything else has to follow that. Kind of like what I was talking about earlier with well-being. So as you see on the screen, this is one part of his model where we understand that every human being has these basic fundamental human needs, and if we're not meeting these needs, we will see depression, agitation, and aggression, yelling. We will see all kinds of really severe problems if we do not focus on these 5 areas. You also began to see in the, I think it was the 2000s, 2008, that a lot of research went into what is well-being. And the Eden Alternative published a report on the 7 domains of well-being, really looking at, okay, if a human being is going to live well, they need support in these areas. They need to have meaning and purpose. They need to have a clear sense of identity. They need to feel secure. They need to be connected to other people. They need some autonomy to make decisions. They need to be able to keep growing. And so we need to create care settings that support them in that way. And none of these things are necessarily going away. Like, these are all great models that we work with. A more recent model that's kind of come out, and it's partly in reaction to the way person-centered care began to become really focused on simply the individual. Even though Thomas Kitwood and proponents of person-centered care saw the whole context in which an individual lives, the way it kind of got translated into practice was that a community, a home health agency would say, we do person-centered care if they created a great life story and interest form and learned about the person's life, and then tried to tailor their care to match their particular unique personal interests. And what got lost in that was really seeing that a person with dementia is not kind of a discrete individual, and we have to kind of pump all these inputs into the individual to make them happy. Instead, individuals are, like you see on the screen, part of a web of relationships. So we have a relationship between the person with dementia and the care partner, the person with dementia and their family, the family with the care partner, the care partner with the family, right? That these relationships create wellness. If you do not have healthy relationships here, you do not have wellness. You may have great care. You may have someone getting their bath every day, someone getting their food every day, etc., but it's not great care. It's not well-being. It's not healthy, thriving environment. And so what relationship-centered care calls us to do is to pay more attention to the relationships than to necessarily individual parties in the relationships. Obviously, you can't really have great relationships without paying attention to the individuals. But the point is to really look at how authentic are these relationships? Are they healthy? Think for a moment. Think of a person in your life where you had an engaging, meaningful relationship. Think about that person that you could just sit and have coffee with, and you looked forward to them coming over. You looked forward to going out with them. What was it about that relationship? Was it authenticity? You know, what, and you're welcome to chat me right now if you have any comments on this. You know, what was it about those relationships that made you want to be with this person? Those are the same things that we need in the relationships among all three of these parties, right? It's the same characteristics: the authenticity, the transparency, the warmth, the looking in each other's eyes, the telling stories, the being real with each other, the learning how to give and take, to not just give. No one likes to be with someone who's always treating you like a charity case, and they're going to just keep giving, but you can't give anything to them, right? All these things come into play in these relationships that you're seeing on my screen, all of them. All of the bad parts of relationships come into play here, and the good ones are what's necessary. Now, I want to, common interests and respects, says Karen. Absolutely. Do we share common interests, or are we just gonna change your clothes and head on out and we have nothing in common? That's excellent. I wanna look for a moment, just think for a moment about a gentleman that we worked with as in one of our communities in Longview. He was a gentleman who wouldn't take showers from our staff at all. He only would take them from his daughter. And our team did a concerted effort to really apply best relationship-centered care practices over a 4-day period. And what they found was, by applying these basic principles of how you establish authentic relationships with a human being, they were able to see this person come from absolute refusal to, in 4 days, he was accepting showers from our team willingly, cooperatively, peacefully, in just 4 days. And it was all about basic, fundamental ways that we treat one another with respect and dignity. Things like making appointments with him, things like ensuring his privacy, things like really paying attention to him as a person, not just coming in and talking about the shower, but just getting to know him and really spending time with him and touching him in ways that told you you're a human that I care about, right? I can't go into all the things that they did, but relationship-centered care made a difference in just 4 days. Now, relationships also involve other things, right? I'm not going to go into how government impacts these relationships, how the media, how books, how magazines impact these relationships. Our friends are part of this relational network, as well as our faith community. But I just point that out to keep in mind that these are not the only 3 relationships, that these other relationships are just as important in shaping how people with dementia live in the United States. Now, something that I think is also important is to value other aspects of relationship. And so, you know, we have these kind of personal relationships, but we also have relationships with nature. We have relationships with the spiritual realm. We have relationships with our friends and family and animals, and with the larger community and serving the larger community, our patriotism and our ethnic pride, our relationship with ourself, right, our mind and body. And so, you know, at Kelch Communities, we use 7 domains of relationship to kind of expand the notion that relationship is just between kind of the family, the care partner, and the person with dementia, but that we can actually have relationships with trees, with beauty, with art, and we need these relationships restored as well. And so our programs, our plans need to ensure that anywhere where someone has those relationships, that we continue to cultivate them, right? When someone gets dementia, they often lose their connection with the spiritual, maybe not intrinsically, but in that they're no longer going to their church. They're no longer having someone read scripture to them. They're no longer being asked to pray, even though they used to pray every day or every week at church, or they used to lead a Bible study, or they used to pray a specific prayer or something. That's not happening. So they're losing it, not because of the dementia, but because we as a culture are not supporting them in that. And so we really look at Kelsch and the living well side of things is, are we looking at all 7 domains of relationships and ensuring that we're supporting someone and keeping those relationships intact, right? If it's friends and family, like, okay, we know that relationship's important between the person with dementia and the family. We just talked about that. Well, how can we practically make that happen? Are we using video chat for people who are far away? Are we ensuring that family members are getting invitations every month to things that are fun for families to do together? Do we have resources, tools on site to help family members visit and have something to talk about when they're not sure what to talk about because dad's lost his ability to share as much as he used to share? So that's a kind of an expansion of the relationship-centered model to kind of broaden us to think about the inanimate things, the things that are not human, the things that are human, the things that are spiritual, the things that are social, and really look beyond just the basics. Now, 7 brief practices I want to mention. Now, these are things that you would be paying attention to, asking the question, are these things, most of them have evidence behind them from researchers, are these practices are going to sweeten the life of the person I care about, right? Are these going to help? Are these present at the day center I'm thinking about using, or the home care agency that I am planning to have come into my home to care for my husband, or the memory care that I'm going to have my dad be living in? You know, are these practices in place, okay? So at the top of the screen, you'll see community. That's the practice. The notepads are some things that I'm going to share as examples. But community, socialization, friendship. We know from research that you are less likely to get the flu if you have strong relationships, all right? We know from research that your brain changes with just 10 minutes of certain types of relational interaction, okay? We know from research that friendship is so key. It may be more important than your exercise. It may be more important than nutrition. It may be more important than not smoking. All those things are terrible for you if you don't do them right, but community may trump all of them. The research is still out, but there's some interesting research that seems to indicate it's at least as important as nutrition, exercise, not smoking, and not being obese, all right? So is our plan going to keep dad at home in a chair watching TV all day, or does it integrate him into other people's lives, all right? You know, in a Kelsch community, we do a morning club 7 days a week where people are together in a structured way that builds relationships. We ensure people dine with friends. We create multiple small groups so that people aren't just in a big sea of people playing games all day, but are in smaller groups of maybe 6 to 12 people for various activities so they can build relationships. We integrate opportunities to serve other people because that's a huge part of socialization. Neighborhood gathering spaces, the design itself, our 1-story communities have 9 and our 3-story communities have 22 neighborhood gathering spaces that are designed for relational communication through the very structure of the environment, and then celebrations. Training that works, right? I mean, if I was a family member, I would be asking to come and visit the training that staff member were taking. I'd want to see, how are they being trained? Are they getting hands-on training? Are they getting training that's relationship-centered? Are they getting training where they actually see results in their training? Or is it just a bunch of videos or a bunch of PowerPoints and they're really not getting the training that they need to do this work? Reminiscing. Is there reminiscing built into the program? Because we know from research that reminiscing just creates all kinds of brain responses, and we know from research that it helps emotionally, psychologically. We know over and over again, reminiscing is shown to bring back conversation, expression, and really bring people into the present. So, you know, is the life story a priority? Are we capturing that within a week? of someone coming into our day center or something like that, right? Are we ensuring the whole staff know about the life story? Are we integrating it into, let's say, shadow boxes? At Kels, we do shadow boxes next to each person's room with their story, with pictures, with trinkets. We got curio cabinets with artifacts from different decades. We've got immersive rooms in some of our newer communities that are entirely built like a totally different decade. Our teams should be using the life story every time they talk to residents. They should be referencing aspects of their life. Sensory support. Are we supporting people's hearing? Can they hear what's going on around them? Can they see what's on their plate because their plate's a good color so they can actually see what's there? Are the exercises, the activities, the kits available? Do they get the eyes, the ears? Do they get all the different senses? We provide hot towel service before the meals at a Kelch community with aromatherapy. How are we supporting sensory support? Is music intentionally integrated throughout the community, whether it's personalized playlists that everybody has their own music, or 7 days a week, there's something going on with music and it's spread throughout the day? Is family being engaged? Because is family being shared pictures and video and stories of what's going on with dad? Are there things that we're intentionally planning to do together? Do we like being there? Is it a good place that families actually want to enjoy and love being there? And are timeless values practiced? In whatever service you're considering, are timeless values practiced? Do people follow up with you, even without you asking? Do they keep their promises? When they say they'll send you something, do they send it to you right away? Or do you have to wait a week and have to follow up with them? Do they remember your name? Do they listen to you when you talk? Do they say please and thank you? Are these timeless values integrated into the particular care setting? So just to recap, we've talked about the history, we've talked about some myths, we've talked about the what are some words we use in this field. We've talked about the fundamental philosophy that relationships are the most important thing, and that we have to cultivate excellent relationships in order for a person to thrive and in order for us to have any modicum of great care. And then we've talked about a few practices. Now, my name's Benjamin Surmi, social gerontologist, happy to support you. That's my phone number, that's my email. The person who shared with you about this online event can also get you in touch with me. You can enter a drawing for the caregiver package or the caregiver journal by going to this website. I'll keep that up there, right there. And I just want to let you know that on Thursday, we have a Dr. Colin Hubler, who is a doctor of physical therapy, has created a program specifically during this COVID-19 outbreak to help elders who are stuck at home and may be losing their abilities very rapidly. He's created a 10-minute program you can do near the kitchen sink. And so I highly recommend that you come on Thursday for his presentation. It is at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. So he will be presenting for about 25 minutes on that particular subject. Next week, we have 10 dementia-friendly online activities. We also have a laughter yoga specialist coming to actually do part of a demo of laughter yoga. Later on this month, you'll see some chefs talking about plate presentation, just a fun presentation to think about how we can do a better job in creating wonderful dining experiences at home or in a community. We also have a Maori poi expert who's a doctor who has come up with a way to use poi, ancient Maori practice, to strengthen balance and attention among elders and those with dementia as well. And we also have a art specialist coming to talk about 5 types of art to do at home. So I highly recommend that you join us for any of these. We also have a French team who has trained 50,000 caregivers all over the world in relationship-centered care. They'll be speaking with us on April 29th, sharing what they're doing across Japan and all of Europe. So anyway, all of these things will be emailed to you by the person who originally contacted you. So if you do not have a contact, just go to this website that I have before you, and in the comment section, just make sure you say, hey, nobody's letting me know about these webinars. Get me on a mailing list. I'll make sure on the mailing list. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful, I promised questions and answers. That's right. Everyone else, you're welcome to head out. However, if you do have any questions, go ahead and go to the question box. I'll hang out for another 5-10 minutes and answer any questions there might be. But for everyone else on the call, it was great having you, and have a great day. All right, if you've got questions, there's a Q&A box on your screen. Just click it, and it has a spot where you can ask some questions, and I can answer them live as the questions come in, if there are any questions. You know, I know one question that is fairly frequent is, are you sure someone does not lose their personhood? And what I like to tell folks with that kind of a question is I want to tell them that there's a metaphor that's very helpful. And this metaphor is that you have two bookcases in your mind. One bookcase stores all of your memories of what's happened, people's names, things like that, what you ate for breakfast, where you went to school, what your career was. They're all held in chronological order. And on the other side of you, you've got a bookcase that is your emotional memory. These are the things that really make you who you are. Your love for your parents, your love for your teacher, your desires, your passions. Those things are also on a bookshelf. Now, the bookshelf over here, when dementia hits, this bookshelf starts to shake like crazy and the books start to fall off. And the top ones fall off first. What happened yesterday, what happened this morning, what happened last week. This bookshelf doesn't shake as much. It shakes, but the memories don't fall out as much. And so what I want people to know about is that when you're thinking about a loved one and should you visit them, should you keep visiting this person, you feel like they've lost their person, they don't even know you anymore. My response is this bookshelf is still there. They still have a ton of who they are there. They're just not placing it with the people and words and names and things like that. And so it makes every bit of difference to keep visiting, to keep coming, to keep sharing, to keep relating, because they are able to store new relational memories and new emotional memories every time you're visiting. And if it's going negatively and it's a bad visit, they're going to remember that. If it's great visits, it's positive, it's friendly, it's laughter, they're going to remember that. I have a question. Will this be presented again? Certainly, if I get enough people asking for it and it wasn't a complete bomb, I would love to present again. So thank you, Kristen. I will absolutely consider doing that. All right, looks like we have no more questions today. So you have a wonderful week, and I'll talk to you soon.